The ship was falling apart around him. Jiwon grabbed the control panel with both hands, trying to keep the vessel steady as alarms screamed in his ears. Red lights flashed across every screen. Something had gone terribly wrong with the engine during the jump, and now he was spinning toward an unknown planet with no way to stop. He could see the world below through the cracked window. It was beautiful, covered in violet oceans and white clouds. Massive crystal structures jutted from the water like frozen lightning. But Jiwon had no time to appreciate the view. His ship was burning up as it hit the atmosphere. The crash was violent. Metal screamed and twisted. Jiwon felt his body slam against the safety restraints hard enough to bruise. Then everything went dark. When he opened his eyes again, he was lying in soft purple grass. His head throbbed with pain, and his left arm felt wrong. He tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Everything hurt. But he was alive, which seemed impossible given what had just happened to his ship. The wreckage was scattered across a beautiful garden. Strange flowers with silver petals grew everywhere, and the air smelled like rain and something sweet he couldn't identify. In the distance, Jiwon could see a massive palace made of crystal and white stone. It seemed to float above the ground, supported by nothing he could see. Before he could process what was happening, something grabbed him. He didn't see what it was at first, only felt metal bands wrap around his arms and legs. Robot guardians emerged from the flowers, their bodies made of the same crystal as the palace. They lifted him off the ground without effort and carried him toward the massive building. Jiwon tried to struggle, but his injured body wouldn't cooperate. The robots moved through gardens that seemed to go on forever. Everything was perfectly maintained, yet he saw no gardeners, no workers, no people at all. Just empty beauty stretching in every direction. They brought him into the palace through doors that were 30 feet tall. The inside was even more impressive than the outside. Floors made of polished stone reflected light from windows he couldn't see. Tapestries hung on walls, showing scenes of aliens he didn't recognize doing things he didn't understand. Every room they passed through looked like it was meant for crowds, but all of them were empty. Finally, they entered a throne room so large that Jiwon's voice would probably echo if he tried to speak. At the far end, sitting on a throne made of what looked like frozen starlight, was the most alien being he had ever seen. She was huge, at least 9 feet tall even while sitting down. Her skin glowed with a soft blue light, and she had 4 arms instead of 2. Her face was beautiful in a way that made Jiwon's brain struggle to process it. 2 large eyes watched him with an expression he couldn't read. She wore robes that seemed to be made of liquid silver, and on her head sat a crown of crystal that pulsed with inner light. The robot set Jiwon down on the floor in front of the throne. He tried to stand, but his legs wouldn't support him. So he stayed on his knees, looking up at the alien queen, and waited. For a long moment, she said nothing. She just studied him with those enormous eyes. Jiwon felt like she was looking through him, reading every thought he'd ever had. It was terrifying and strangely peaceful at the same time. When she finally spoke, her voice was like music. "You are human?" It wasn't a question. She spoke perfect English, though her accent made every word sound formal and ancient. "Yes," Jiwon managed to say. His throat was dry. "My ship crashed. I didn't mean to intrude. I'm sorry." "This is Velthara," the queen said. "My world. No one comes here. No one has come here in a very long time." She stood up, and Jiwon realized she was even taller than he'd thought. She walked down the steps from her throne with grace that made her seem like she was floating. "Tell me, human, what is your name?" "Jiwon," he said. "I'm an engineer. I was on a supply run to the colony at Tier Station when something went wrong with my engine." The queen circled him slowly, all 4 of her arms moving in patterns that might have been unconscious gestures. "Jiwon," she repeated, making his name sound like poetry. "I am Queen Nithera. I am the last of my people. This palace was built for thousands. Now only I remain." The sadness in her voice was so deep that Jiwon felt it in his chest. He looked around at the empty throne room again, understanding dawning on him. This wasn't just a palace, it was a tomb, and she was its only living resident. "I should kill you," Nuthera said casually, though her tone suggested she didn't really mean it. Trespassers are not permitted. That is the law. I understand, Ji-won said, because he didn't know what else to say. The queen tilted her head. Studying him again? But I am curious. It has been so long since I heard another voice, since I saw another living creature that could speak and think. She made a gesture with one of her hands, and the robot guardians retreated to the walls. How badly are you injured? My arm might be broken, Ji-won admitted, and I think I have some cracked ribs. But I'll live. The palace has medical facilities, Nithera said. Old, but functional. You will be healed. She turned away from him, walking back toward her throne. And then we will decide what to do with you. Over the next few days, Ji-won learned just how alone the queen really was. Medical robots fixed his injuries with technology he'd never seen before. They gave him a room in the east wing of the palace, a space large enough to house 50 people, but furnished for just one. Every room he passed through was the same, perfect and beautiful and completely empty. Tables set for dinners that would never happen. Libraries full of books written in a language he couldn't read. Gardens maintained by robots for no one to see. He saw the queen twice. Once when she summoned him to ask about his ship. The robots had pulled the wreckage into a repair bay, and she wanted to know if it could be fixed. Ji-won told her it would take time, but he thought he could manage it. The second time, he found her standing alone in a gallery filled with portraits. They showed other aliens like her, dressed in formal clothes, smiling faces captured in paint. She didn't notice him at first. She was touching one of the paintings gently, and Ji-won realized she was crying. He backed away quietly, not wanting to intrude on her grief. But the image stayed with him. This queen, powerful enough to kill him with a thought, reduced to tears in an empty palace, surrounded by ghosts. That night, Ji-won made a decision. He would fix his ship, yes. But he would also try to understand the mystery of this place, and maybe, if he was lucky, he could help the lonely queen who lived here alone. Ji-won spent his mornings working on the ship. The repair bay was enormous, built to handle dozens of vessels at once. Now it held only his small transport, looking tiny and broken in all that empty space. The damage was worse than he'd first thought. He needed parts he didn't have and tools that didn't quite match human designs. But he was an engineer. He knew how to improvise. The afternoons were different. Every day at exactly the same time, a robot would come to his quarters and escort him to the throne room. There, Queen Nithera would ask him about his progress. At first, these meetings were brief and formal. She would listen to his report, nod once, and dismiss him. But slowly, the meetings grew longer. She started asking questions that had nothing to do with ship repairs. Where did he come from? What was Earth like? Did humans live alone or in groups? Ji-won answered honestly, describing his home planet with its crowded cities and loud streets. He told her about his family, his 3 sisters who always made fun of his engineering obsession. He described the small apartment he shared with 2 roommates where they were always arguing about whose turn it was to do dishes. Nithera listened to everything with intense focus. Sometimes she would ask him to repeat details, as if she couldn't quite believe what she was hearing. Your world sounds chaotic, she said one afternoon. So many people, so close together. Don't you crave silence? Sometimes, Ji-won admitted, but mostly, I think I'd go crazy if I was alone for too long. Humans need other people. It's just how we're built. Something flickered across Nithera's face. Pain, maybe, or longing. She turned away from him, looking at the empty throne room. My people valued solitude. We believed that a ruler must maintain distance, must stand above the masses. The palace was designed so the royal family could be separate, elevated. She made a soft sound that might have been a laugh. We were fools. We didn't realize that distance and loneliness are different things until it was too late. Ji-won wanted to ask what had happened to her people, but he sensed the question would hurt her. So instead he said, would you like to see what I'm doing with the ship? I mean, if you're interested, I could show you. For the first time since he'd met her, Nithera looked surprised. You would allow me into your workspace? It's your repair bay, Ji-won said, confused. You can go anywhere you want. Yes, she said quietly. but no one has invited me anywhere in 300 years. The next day, she came to the repair bay. Jiwon showed her the engine he was rebuilding, explaining how human faster-than-light drives worked. She asked intelligent questions, and he realized she understood advanced physics better than most professors he'd studied under. They fell into a routine after that. Mornings, he worked on the ship. Afternoons, she would visit, and they would talk while he worked. She told him about Veltheran technology, about power sources that drew energy from dimensional folds and materials that existed in multiple states at once. In return, Jiwon told her stories from his life. Funny stories, mostly, like the time he'd accidentally locked himself in a cargo hold for 6 hours and had to sing Earth songs to stay sane. Or when his sister Minji had convinced him that a certain alien fruit was delicious, and it turned out to be what aliens used for industrial lubricant. When he finished that story, Nithara made a sound he'd never heard before. It took him a moment to realize she was laughing. The sound was musical, like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. She covered her mouth with one of her hands, as if surprised by her own reaction. "I'm sorry," she said, still smiling. "That was inappropriate." "Why?" Jiwon asked. "It was a funny story." Laughing is the right response. "Queens do not laugh," Nithara said, but she didn't sound certain about it anymore. "Well," Jiwon said carefully, "maybe queens should laugh more often." One evening, Jiwon asked permission to explore the palace gardens. Nithara agreed, though she seemed puzzled by the request. He spent hours walking through the carefully maintained grounds, looking at alien plants he had no names for. Finally, he found what he was searching for: a plot of rich soil that was currently empty. He had emergency supplies in his ship, including a small packet of earth seeds. They were meant for emergencies, fast-growing plants that could provide food if he got stranded. But Jiwon had a different use in mind. He planted the seeds carefully, marking the plot with stones: tomatoes, peppers, and basil. If they grew, he'd have a little piece of earth here on Velthera. A week later, Nithara found him tending the small sprouts that had emerged. She stood at the edge of the garden watching silently. "What are you doing?" she finally asked. "Making a garden," Jiwon said. "Or trying to. I don't know if earth plants will grow in Veltheran soil, but I wanted to try." "Why?" Jiwon sat back on his heels, thinking about his answer. "Because gardens are about hope," he said. "You plant something small and fragile, and you hope it grows into something good. Plus, I miss the smell of tomato plants. They remind me of my grandmother's garden." Nithara came closer, kneeling beside him with surprising grace despite her size. She reached out with one hand to touch the small sprouts gently. "I haven't planted anything in 247 years, she said softly. "The garden maintains itself. I gave up trying to add to it long ago." "Would you like to help?" Jiwon offered. "I have more seeds." For a moment, he thought she would refuse. Then, slowly, she nodded. They spent the next hour planting earth vegetables in alien soil. Jiwon showed her how deep to put the seeds, how much space each plant needed. Nithara followed his instructions carefully, all 4 of her hands moving in coordination. When they finished, they sat together in the dirt, looking at their work. The sun was setting, painting the violet sky in shades of orange and pink. "Tell me about your people," Jiwon said quietly. "If you want to, if it's not too painful." Nithara was silent for a long time. Then she began to speak. "There were millions of us once. Velthara was crowded, noisy, full of life. Then came the plague. It was fast. Within a year, 90% of my people were dead. Within 5 years, I was the only one left." She stared at the small plants they'd just planted. "I survived because of my royal bloodline. We were engineered to be resistant to disease, to be stronger than common Veltherans. It was supposed to ensure the continuity of the throne." "But it left you alone," Jiwon said. "Yes." Her voice was barely a whisper. "There is a law, written into the foundation of this palace. The queen must remain until death. Even if all her subjects are gone, even if there is no kingdom left to rule, she must stay. It is her duty." Jiwon felt anger rise in his chest. "That's not duty, that's prison." "Perhaps," Nithara said. "But it is the law." "Laws can be wrong," Jiwon said firmly. Laws made by dead people for a dead world shouldn't control the living. Nithara looked at him, really looked at him, with all the intensity of her alien gaze. You are very young, Jiwan, and very bold. I'm old enough to know that nobody should be alone for 300 years, he said. And I'm bold enough to say it. For a long moment, they sat in silence. Then Nithara stood, brushing dirt from her robes. Come, I want to show you something. She led him deep into the palace, to a library he hadn't seen before. The shelves stretched up 50 feet, filled with books and data crystals. She pulled down a volume bound in something that looked like leather but shimmered in the light. This is the history of my people, she said, handing it to him. I have a device that will translate it for you. Read it. Learn about us. Perhaps then you will understand why I remain. Jiwon took the book carefully. It was heavy in his hands. Thank you for trusting me with this. Thank you for making me laugh, Nithara replied. It has been a long time since I remembered what joy feels like. That night, Jiwon began reading the history of the Veltharans. And as he read, he started to understand not just what they had lost, but what might still be saved. The ship was almost ready. Another week, maybe 2, and Jiwon would be able to leave Velthara. He should have been happy about this. Instead, he felt a heavy weight in his chest every time he thought about it. He'd been on the planet for 3 months now. 3 months of slowly repairing his transport, of learning about the Veltharans, of spending afternoons with Queen Nithara. The palace didn't feel empty anymore. Or maybe it did, but he'd gotten used to the emptiness. Either way, the thought of leaving made him feel sick. Nithara had become distant again. She still came to the repair bay, but she stayed for shorter periods. She smiled less. When she thought he wasn't looking, he caught her staring at the ship with an expression he couldn't read. One morning, while Jiwon was calibrating the navigation system, she appeared in the doorway of the repair bay. She didn't say anything at first. She just watched him work. The storms are coming, she finally said. In 5 days, Velthara enters its storm season. The atmospheric disturbances are severe. Your ship would not survive if you tried to launch during that time. Jiwon turned to face her. How long does the storm season last? 6 months, Nithara said. If you wish to leave, you must do so within the next 4 days. I can extend the palace shields to protect your ship during launch. But after that, the window closes. 4 days. Jiwon's hands went still on the control panel. 4 days, and he would either leave this place forever or be stuck here for half a year. Maybe longer, if something else went wrong. I understand, he said quietly. Nithara nodded once and left without another word. Jiwon tried to focus on the work, but his mind kept wandering. He thought about Earth, about his family and friends. He thought about his small apartment and his comfortable, predictable life. Then he thought about Nithara, alone in this massive palace, waiting out another 300 years of solitude. That night, he couldn't sleep. He walked through the palace halls, past empty rooms and silent galleries. Eventually, he found himself in the library where Nithara had given him the history book. He'd read it 3 times now. He knew the story of the Veltharans almost as well as his own history. Near the back of the book, there had been a passage that he kept returning to. It described the royal vaults, deep beneath the palace. The Veltharans had been advanced in ways humanity couldn't imagine. They'd learned to preserve consciousness, to store genetic patterns, to archive the essence of who they were. The book said that the royal family had created a vault containing the genetic material and consciousness backups of thousands of Veltharans. It was their insurance against extinction. But it required specialized knowledge to activate, knowledge that apparently died with the scientists and engineers who built it. Jiwon had been thinking about that vault for weeks now, wondering if it still existed, wondering if it might still work. He found Nithara in the throne room. She was sitting on the floor instead of her throne, looking small despite her size. She was holding something in her hands, turning it over and over. As Jiwon got closer, he saw it was a small sculpture of a Veltharan child. I haven't been honest with you, Jiwon said. Nithara looked up, surprised. What do you mean? I've been sending messages, he said. For the past month. Not distress calls, recommendations. I've been telling the Human Exploration Council about Velthara, about its beauty, its history. I've recommended that this world be designated as a protected cultural heritage site. Why would you do that? Nuthera asked. Because someone needs to remember your people, Jiwan said. Because this place is important, and because I was hoping they might send scientists, historians, people who could help preserve what's left. Help preserve a tomb, you mean? Nuthera said bitterly. No, Jiwan said firmly. That's not what I mean at all. He moved closer, sitting on the floor across from her. I read about the vault, the genetic repository, the consciousness archives. I know it's down there, somewhere beneath this palace. Nuthera's expression shifted to something like shock. The vault is legend, a story we told ourselves to feel safer. Even if it exists, no one knows how to operate it. The knowledge died with the engineers. I'm an engineer, Jiwan said, and I've spent 3 months learning about Veltharan technology. I might not know how to operate it, but I could learn. We could figure it out together. That's impossible, Nuthera said, but there was something in her voice. Hope, maybe? Fragile and frightening? Maybe, Jiwan admitted. Maybe it is impossible, but what if it's not? What if your people could come back? What if you didn't have to be alone anymore? Why? Nuthera's voice cracked. Why would you care? You're human. This isn't your world. These aren't your people. You could leave in 4 days and never think about me again. Why would you risk everything for a queen you barely know? Jiwan took a deep breath. Because nobody should be alone for 300 years. Because you taught me about your people and their art and their philosophy, and they deserve to exist again. Because you laughed at my stupid stories, and that sound made me happier than I've been in years. He met her alien eyes steadily. And because somewhere along the way, I started to care about you. Not as a queen, just as you. Nuthera stared at him for a long moment. Then she covered her face with 2 of her hands. Her shoulders shook, and Jiwon realized she was crying. I want so badly to hope, she whispered. But hope is terrifying. 300 years ago, I hoped that someone would survive with me. That I would find another Veltharan somewhere. I held on to that hope for 50 years, and it nearly destroyed me when I finally accepted the truth. I can't go through that again. You won't be alone this time, Jiwan said gently. Even if we fail, even if the vault is empty or broken or impossible to operate, you won't be alone. I'll stay. I'll help you try. Your ship, Nuthera said. The storms. I'll take my chances with the storms in 6 months, Jiwan said. Or 6 years, however long it takes. You would give up your life for this? Nuthera asked. For a quest that might be impossible? For a queen who has nothing to offer you but the chance to fail? I'm not giving up my life, Jiwan said. I'm choosing a different one, and you have plenty to offer. Knowledge, friendship, a purpose bigger than delivering supplies to mining colonies? He smiled. Plus, our garden is growing really well. I want to see if the tomatoes taste different in alien soil. Despite her tears, Nuthera made that sound that might have been a laugh. You are very strange, Jiwan. I've been told that before, he admitted. For a long time, they sat in silence. Then Nuthera stood, and Jiwan stood with her. She looked down at him with all the intensity of her alien gaze. There is a door, she said quietly, in the lowest level of the palace. I have never opened it. I was too afraid of what I might find inside or what I might not find. But if you truly mean what you say, if you are willing to help me try, then we will open it together. When? Jiwan asked. Now, Nuthera said. Before I lose my courage. Before I remember all the reasons this is foolish. They descended through the palace, level after level, going deeper than Jiwan had ever been. The air grew cold, and the crystal lights embedded in the walls grew dimmer. Finally, they reached a corridor that ended in a massive door made of some dark metal. On the door was carved the royal seal of Velthara. Nuthera placed her hand against it, and the metal shimmered under her touch. I need you to understand something, she said, not looking at him. If this works, everything changes. The vault contains thousands of consciousnesses. If we can restore them, if we can bring my people back, this palace will no longer be a tomb. It will be a kingdom again. And I will be responsible for helping them adapt to a galaxy that has moved on without them. I know, Jiwan said. And you will be the first human they meet, Nuthera continued. They may not trust you. They may resent your presence. Some may even hate you for being alive when so many Veltharans are dead. I know that too, Jiwan said. Nuthera finally turned to look at him. And if it doesn't work? If the vault is empty, or broken, or contains nothing but dust? Then we tried, Jiwan said simply. And we tried together. That's more than you've had for 300 years. Nuthera nodded slowly. Then she pressed her hand more firmly against the seal. The door shuddered. Ancient mechanisms groaned to life. Slowly, impossibly, the door began to open. The vault was real. That was the first miracle. As the ancient door opened, lights flickered on automatically, revealing a chamber so vast that Jiwan couldn't see the far wall. Rows upon rows of crystalline storage units stretched into the darkness, each one glowing with a soft blue light. By the stars, Nuthera whispered. It's still powered. After all this time, it's still powered. They entered carefully, their footsteps echoing in the enormous space. The storage units were organized in sections, each one labeled with symbols that Nuthera could read. She moved between them slowly, touching them with reverent care. These are genetic samples, she said, pointing to one section, and these contain consciousness backups, personality matrices, memories, everything that made someone who they were. She turned in a slow circle, taking it all in. There are thousands here, maybe tens of thousands. Jiwan approached one of the units carefully. It was more complex than anything he'd worked with before, but he could recognize some basic principles. Power conduits, data storage, biopreservation systems. The engineering was beautiful, elegant in a way that human technology wasn't. Can you read this? He pointed to a control panel covered in Veltharan script. Nuthera came to stand beside him. It's old-style writing. Very formal. She ran her fingers over the symbols. This section contains instructions for revival procedures, but it requires multiple operators, specific knowledge of bioengineering, and consciousness transfer protocols. We have time, Jiwan said. We have 6 months before I could leave even if I wanted to. We can learn. And so they began. Every day they came to the vault and studied the systems. Nuthera translated the ancient texts while Jiwan tried to understand the technology. It was slow work, frustrating, and complex. The instructions assumed knowledge they didn't have, referenced equipment that no longer existed. After 2 months of study, Jiwan sent a message to human space. He explained the situation carefully, asking for scientific assistance. He was honest about what they were trying to do and what the challenges were. 3 months later, a human research vessel arrived. On board was Daeho, one of the best xenobiologists in human space, and someone Jiwan had studied with years ago. Daeho also brought 3 other scientists, all specialists in genetics, consciousness studies, and alien technology. Nuthera was terrified when the humans arrived. She'd grown comfortable with Jiwan, but the idea of meeting 4 more humans at once nearly overwhelmed her. She hid in the throne room and refused to come out. Jiwan found her there, sitting on her throne and trying to look regal and unafraid. She was failing at both. They're my friends, he said gently. Daeho especially. I've known him for 10 years. He's loud and he makes terrible jokes, but he's brilliant and he's kind. He won't judge you. What if I'm awkward? Nuthera asked. What if I say something wrong? I haven't spoken to anyone but you in so long. What if they think I'm strange? You are strange, Jiwan said with a smile. But so am I. So is everyone, really. Just be yourself. That's enough. The meeting was awkward at first. Daeho and the other scientists were clearly in awe of Nuthera, and she was stiff and formal with them. But Daeho did what he always did. He started asking questions about Veltharan biology, and his genuine enthusiasm was impossible to resist. Within an hour, Nuthera was explaining the unique aspects of her species' genetic engineering. Within 2 hours, she was actually smiling at one of Daeho's terrible jokes. By the end of the day, the scientists were all working together in the vault, sharing knowledge and theories. The first revival attempt was a disaster. They chose a simple consciousness backup, someone who had died young and had a relatively uncomplicated pattern. They prepared the genetic material, activated the restoration protocols, and waited. Nothing happened. The systems hummed and lights flashed, but no consciousness emerged. No body formed. After 6 hours, they had to admit failure. Nithera retreated to her chambers and wouldn't speak to anyone for 2 days. The second attempt was worse. This time, something did emerge. A partially formed body, unconscious and clearly not viable. They had to terminate the process, and the experience left everyone shaken. "We're missing something," Deho said after the third failed attempt. "The technology works, but there's a component we don't understand. Something about how the consciousness integrates with the body." They studied for another month. Jiwon stopped sleeping normally, catching a few hours here and there between sessions in the vault. Nithera looked exhausted, her glow dimmer than usual. Finally, one of the human scientists found it. Hidden in the most technical section of the instructions was a reference to something called a neural bridge. The revival process needed a living Veltheran consciousness to guide the restoration. Without it, the backed-up consciousness had no template to follow. "That's why it didn't work," Nithera said quietly. "They designed it assuming there would be survivors. Multiple survivors working together. They never imagined only one would be left." "So you need to be the bridge," Jiwon said. "Your consciousness guides the others back." "Yes," Nithera said. "But the process is dangerous. My mind would be exposed, vulnerable. If something goes wrong, I could be damaged. I could lose myself." "Then we won't do it," Jiwon said immediately. "No," Nithara said firmly. "We will do it. This is what I was meant to survive for. Not to rule an empty palace, but to bring my people back. Even if it kills me, we have to try." They prepared carefully. Deho suggested that a human could assist, providing a secondary neural connection to help stabilize the process. Someone who knew Nithera well, whose mind could work with hers. "I'll do it," Jiwon said, before anyone else could volunteer. The procedure took 12 hours. Jiwon lay in one chamber, while Nithera was in another. Their minds connected through Veltheran technology that humanity couldn't fully understand. The human scientists monitored everything, ready to shut it down if anything went wrong. For Jiwon, the experience was overwhelming. He felt Nithera's presence in his mind, vast and ancient and deeply sad. He experienced fragments of her memories. 300 years of loneliness compressed into moments. The grief of watching her people die. The slow acceptance that she would never see another Veltheran face. But he also felt other things. Her curiosity when his ship crashed. The first time she'd laughed at his story. The cautious hope when they discovered the vault. And underneath everything, her affection for him, as deep and real as his, was for her. He held on to that feeling and tried to send her his own. His memories of their garden. Of teaching her about Earth customs, of sitting together in comfortable silence. His certainty that she deserved more than loneliness, that her people deserved a second chance. Something shifted. Through their connection, Jiwon felt another consciousness stirring. Someone was waking up, coming back from wherever the dead went. The process ended suddenly. Jiwon woke up gasping, his head pounding. Deho was there immediately, checking his vitals. "Did it work?" Jiwon managed to ask. "See for yourself," Deho said, helping him sit up. In the center of the vault, standing uncertain and confused, was a Veltheran. Not Nithera. Someone else. Someone smaller, younger, with skin that glowed green instead of blue. They had done it. They had brought someone back. But when Jiwon looked for Nithera, his heart stopped. She was still in her chamber, unconscious. The machines showed brain activity, but she wasn't waking up. "The process took too much from her," one of the scientists said. "She's alive, but her consciousness is scattered. She needs time to recover." "How much time?" Jiwon demanded. The scientist hesitated. "We don't know. Days, maybe, or weeks, or..." She didn't finish the sentence, but Jiwon heard it anyway. "Or never." Over the next few days, 5 more Veltherans were brought back using the same process. Each one woke confused and disoriented, 300 years out of time. And each time it worked only because Nithara's consciousness was still connected to the system, still guiding them back even though she herself remained unconscious. The revived Veltharans struggled to understand what had happened. One of them, a male named Thyros who had been a royal advisor, took charge. When he learned that a human had been involved in their revival, he was suspicious. "This is wrong," Thyros said, standing over Nithara's unconscious form. "Humans should not be here. This is Veltharan business." "The humans are helping," Deho said carefully. "Without them, and without Jiwan specifically, your queen never would have tried to revive you. Our queen never would have needed human help if humans hadn't disrupted our world," Thyros snapped. Jiwan didn't argue. He sat beside Nithara's chamber, holding her hand, and waited for her to wake up. The other humans gave him space, but they watched the situation with growing concern. 3 weeks. That's how long Nithara had been unconscious. 3 weeks of Jiwan sitting beside her, talking to her, hoping she could hear him somehow. 3 weeks of watching the palace come back to life around them, while the one person who should be celebrating remained trapped in sleep. The revived Veltharans had grown from 5 to 50. Thyros and the other early revivals had learned to operate the restoration systems themselves, though they still needed Nithara's unconscious presence to guide each new awakening. The palace was starting to feel alive again. Voices echoed in halls that had been silent for centuries. Lights came on in rooms that had been dark. But Thyros remained hostile to the humans. He never said anything directly threatening, but he made it clear that he wanted them gone. He assigned Veltharans to watch the human scientists, questioned every action they took. He especially watched Jiwan, as if waiting for him to do something wrong. "You should leave," Deho told Jiwan one evening. "Thyros is getting more aggressive. Some of the other Veltharans are listening to him. If things turn violent, we're outnumbered." "I'm not leaving her," Jiwan said simply, not taking his eyes off Nithara's sleeping face. "She might never wake up," Deho said gently. "The scans show brain activity, but it's not normal. Something happened during the connection. Something we don't understand. Jiwan, you need to prepare yourself for the possibility that she's gone." "She's not gone," Jiwan said. "I can feel her. We were connected, remember? Some part of that connection is still there. She's fighting to come back. She just needs more time." Deho sighed, but didn't argue further. He left Jiwan alone with the queen. Jiwan talked to her about everything, about the garden, which had produced actual tomatoes that tasted strange but good in the alien soil, about the revived Veltharans and how they were adjusting to their new reality, about Thyros and his suspicions. "He's not wrong to be angry," Jiwan said quietly. "His whole world is gone. Everyone he knew outside this vault is dead. He went to sleep in one era and woke up in another. That's got to be terrifying. I get why he wants someone to blame." He squeezed her hand gently. "But I need you to wake up. They need you to wake up. You're their queen. They'll listen to you. And I miss you. I miss talking to you. I miss your laugh. I miss the way you look at the stars like you're reading a language I don't understand." He thought he felt her hand twitch, but it might have been his imagination. On the 22nd day, Thyros came to Nithara's chamber with 3 other Veltharans. They stood in the doorway, watching Jiwan with unreadable expressions. "You should rest," Thyros said. "You have not left her side in days. This is not healthy." "I'm fine," Jiwan said. "You are not fine," Thyros said, his tone slightly softer. "You are exhausted, you are grieving, and you are alone among people who do not trust you." Jiwan looked up at him. "Do you trust me?" Thyros was silent for a long moment. "I do not know. You are human. Your kind is ambitious, opportunistic. You seek advantage wherever you can find it. What advantage do you gain by sitting beside our queen day after day?" "None," Jiwan said. "I just care about her." "Why?" Thyros asked. "You barely knew her. You were here for a few months. That is nothing compared to her centuries of life." "Sometimes time doesn't matter," Jiwan said. "Sometimes you just connect with someone. She was kind to me when she could have killed me." She shared her knowledge, her culture, her grief. She laughed at my stupid jokes. She planted a garden with me. That's worth more than years of casual acquaintance. One of the other Veltharans, a female, stepped forward. He speaks truth. I can sense it. His intentions are pure. Emotions can be pure without being wise, Thyros said. But perhaps... He moved closer, looking down at Nithara. She trusted him. That much is clear from the records. She chose to open the vault because of him. She risked everything because he gave her hope. She gave me hope too, Jiwon said quietly. She showed me that it's possible to keep going even when everything seems lost. That 300 years of loneliness didn't make her bitter or cruel. That she could still laugh, still care, still try to save people who had been dead for centuries. He looked at Thyros directly. Your queen is the strongest person I've ever met, and I'm going to stay here until she wakes up, no matter what you think about it. Thyros studied him for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, he nodded. Very well, but you will eat. You will sleep. You are no good to her if you collapse. He gestured to the other Veltharans. We will watch her when you rest. You have my word that she will be safe. It was the first kindness Thyros had shown, and Jiwon was too exhausted to refuse it. That night, sleeping in his own quarters for the first time in weeks, Jiwon dreamed. He was in the garden with Nithara. She was showing him a flower he didn't recognize, explaining its meaning in Veltharan culture. She looked happy. Then, in the dream, she turned to him. Thank you for waiting, she said. I'm almost back. Just a little longer. Jiwon woke up with tears on his face. He ran to her chamber and found Thyros and several other Veltharans already there. They were crowded around the medical equipment, talking in rapid Veltharan. What's happening? Jiwon demanded. Her patterns are changing, Thyros said, and for the first time he sounded excited. She's coming back. It took 3 more days, but finally, Nithara opened her eyes. The first thing she saw was Jiwon's face. He was holding her hand, looking exhausted and worried and hopeful all at once. Did it work? She whispered. Her voice was weak, but it was her voice. It worked, Jiwon said, and he was crying openly now. You did it. You brought them back. How many? She asked. 50 so far, Thyros said, moving into her field of vision. My queen, we thought we had lost you. You can't lose me that easily, Nithara said. She tried to sit up and Jiwon helped her. I am the queen of Velthara. I survived 300 years of loneliness. I survived the plague. I survived the guilt of being the only one left. She looked around at the Veltharans gathered in her chamber. And I survived bringing you back. Now help me stand. We have work to do. Recovery was slow. Nithara was weak for weeks, but she insisted on being present for every new revival. The numbers grew. 50 became 100. 100 became 200. The palace filled with life. The restored Veltharans struggled with their new reality. They had gone to sleep in a thriving world and awakened to find themselves centuries displaced. Some handled it better than others. There were arguments, moments of despair, conflicts about how to move forward. But Nithara held them together. She was patient with their grief, firm when they needed direction, and honest about the challenges they faced. And slowly, with Jiwon and the human scientists helping, they began to build a new society. Thyros became Nithara's chief advisor again, but in a different way than before. He consulted with her rather than simply following orders. He questioned her decisions when he thought she was wrong. And he learned to work with the humans, even though it didn't come naturally to him. Daeho and the other scientists stayed for 6 months, helping with the revival process and teaching the Veltharans about the current state of the galaxy. When they finally returned to human space, they left with promises to come back, to continue building the bridge between their peoples. 1 year after Jiwon had crashed on Velthara, the Veltharan population reached 500. The palace was alive again, filled with voices and laughter and the normal chaos of people living together. Nithara called a formal assembly in the throne room. Every Veltharan who could attend was there, along with Jiwon and a few human diplomats who had recently arrived. 300 years ago, Nithara said, her voice carrying through the huge chamber, I watched my people die. I stood alone in this palace and believed that I would always be alone. I accepted that as my fate, as my punishment for surviving when so many didn't. She paused, looking out at the crowd. Then a human crashed in my garden. He was injured, lost, completely at my mercy. I could have killed him. The law said I should have killed him, but I didn't. I was curious. I was lonely. And I made a choice that changed everything. She gestured for Jiwon to join her. He walked up to the throne platform, feeling awkward with so many eyes on him. This human gave me something I had forgotten existed, Nithara continued. Hope. He convinced me that being the last of my kind didn't mean I had to be the last forever. That the vault beneath this palace wasn't just a tomb, but a promise. And he was right. She turned to address the Veltharans directly. We are not the same people who died 3 centuries ago. We cannot be. The galaxy has changed. We have changed. The old laws, the old ways of separation and distance, those served us poorly. They left me alone when I should have been surrounded by life. So I am writing a new law. This palace will no longer be a place of isolation. Velthara will be a joint world, shared between our people and the humans who helped us return. We will learn from each other. We will build together. We will make sure that neither of our peoples ever faces extinction alone again. There was silence for a moment. Then Thyros stepped forward. The queen is wise, he said. We were preserved by human hands. We were guided back by a human heart. It is only fitting that we share our future with them. The other Veltharans murmured agreement. Some looked uncertain, but none objected. Nithara smiled. Jiwon will serve as the first ambassador of humanity to Velthara. He will help us navigate this new reality and help his people understand ours. Jiwon blinked in surprise. You didn't mention that part, he whispered. I'm mentioning it now, Nithara whispered back. Unless you have somewhere else you need to be? Jiwon thought about his old life, his small apartment, his routine supply runs. Then he thought about this place, these people, this queen who had somehow become his closest friend. No, he said. I'm exactly where I need to be. That evening, Jiwon and Nithara walked through the garden together. Their tomatoes had spread, and now there were earth vegetables growing alongside Veltharan flowers. You changed my life, Nithara said quietly. You gave me back my people, my purpose, my hope. I don't know how to thank you for that. You don't need to thank me, Jiwon said. You did the hard part. You chose to try. You risked everything to bring them back. I just helped. You did more than help, Nithara said. She stopped walking and turned to face him. You saw me when I was just a lonely queen in an empty palace. You treated me like a person, not a myth. You made me laugh again. You reminded me what it felt like to have a friend. You're my friend too, Jiwon said. The best friend I've ever had, actually. They stood there in the garden, human and alien, looking up at the stars together. The palace behind them glowed with light and life. Voices drifted from open windows. Somewhere, someone was singing. What do you think happens next? Jiwon asked. I don't know, Nithara admitted. But for the first time in 300 years, I'm excited to find out. They walked back to the palace together, and neither of them was alone.